What role does empathy play in the healing process? The world of healing is one of the most dominant experiences in people's lives today. Is it a billion or trillion-dollar industry? Whether we're talking about medication, therapy, all types of alternative methods, especially in the area of psychological and emotional healing. But there's a component that, though it's been spoken about, has not been emphasized enough, and especially its value not appreciated. And that is the power of empathy. I'm sure you've heard of mirror neurons. It's been proven that we mirror each other. For example, if you see someone about to slam a door on their own fingers, God forbid, you'll cringe and even say, ouch, even though it's not happening to you, because you so identify with that experience that it's as if it's happening to you. But let's take that to the next level. How far does that effect have? Can it actually help another person when we feel for them? When they feel that we feel for them, when there's care, concern, compassion. So let us join together and explore this important topic. Please join me. The empathy effect. Feel, listen, heal. Welcome to the program that we'll be discussing the empathy effect. Feel, listen, heal. This program is dedicated in honor of Jay Gainsborough with gratitude and warm wishes on his birthday. Much has been written and said about healing. Let's discuss the role of empathy, compassion in the healing process. I'm sure you've all heard of the concept of mirror neurons. It's quite fascinating. On one hand, we all seem to be individual, autonomous, and separate entities. And yet, there are things that happen that connect us in ways that it's hard to even imagine. So mirror neurons have been proven that we actually mirror the feelings of another. Classic example for this is when you see somebody about to, let's say, slam a door on their own fingers or a trunk of a car. You may even yell out, ouch. You'll definitely cringe, even though it's not happening to you. You're not feeling it, but you so identify with the person that's experiencing it that it's as if it's happening to you. So initially, this sounds a little spooky. I'm using that word very deliberately because there was something similar discovered in the middle of the early 20th century when quantum mechanics was beginning to be developed. The idea that the world is fundamentally all connected and subatomic particles sense each other faster than the speed of light. To the point that Einstein expressed himself that he never accepted that because he called it spooky movement from a distance. That generally speaking, something that's distant from one another, if you're living in one city, another person in another city, how could you have an impact on that person? Unless there's some direct connection between the two of you. But it's been proven that things that are even millions of miles away affect each other. That indeed, to the point that we're really not a fragmented, disjointed universe, but that it's all different pieces of one big picture. Think of the human organism. Even though the head and the toe in the same body are distant from one another, and I don't just mean distant in space, it's not that far technically, but is distant, they seemingly have no connection to one another, but it's not correct. If you have a pain in your toe, it's going to affect your entire being. Because even though there's different limbs and organs, and definitely different cells, between 35 and 75 trillion cells, and yet there's some intrinsic connection between all of them. Now that shouldn't surprise us. Remember, it all began with one cell. Upon conception, the new conceived life was only one cell. That cell split into two into four, 4 into 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on. So it shouldn't be a surprise that with that cell split, that they're all really connected, because they all begin and remain connected. And indeed, that's what we see today in the DNA, that the DNA in one cell is mirrored in all the others. The same in a tree. It all begins with a seed, and then it turns into a mighty tree. But what's fascinating, that this extends beyond the tree, beyond one person. And indeed, we have the mirror neurons. And that's just one example of many. And we have hardly scratched the surface of discovering how deep that connection is. But let's take it into now practical application. Into the area, can this be used in a way that helps us, one another? So I want to share a story that happened a number of years ago. We were hosting a weekend camping retreat every summer. A few hundred people would come together. We had a good camping site, and people roughed it, so to speak. It was a far cry from a 5-star hotel, subject and vulnerable to the elements. But we built a big, large tent. We had a good staff that helped people pitch tents. And if you know how to pitch one, you can pretty much protect yourself from rain and other aspects. But still, not exactly, as I said, a comfortable bed with pillows. Even though if you stuff pillows and blankets into a tent, it can be quite comfortable. I was someone that never slept in a tent, so it was not exactly easy for me initially. But then, but there was a strong bonding experience. When you're not with the physical structures of concrete, and you have to really be with others under the skies, and you pray together, and you sing together, and you eat meals together, and you bond, there's a deep connection that's created. And but we also knew that not everybody was used to it. People may think it may be exciting, and then when they come to realize that it's a little, it's not the usual Western style accommodations, like I said, of a hotel. So we had a staff that was trained to be able to help people accommodate and help make them comfortable. And we always knew there were always going to be people with complaints and so on. So we had a good outdoor caterer. There was good food. Generally speaking, as much as possible, we made it as easy as possible. But still, there were always those that were not happy. So one of the years, I remember, it was Friday night, and the guests were coming. It was a few hundred, maybe 300-400 people. And there was one particular woman who attended, and she was definitely not in a good place. And the staff that were dealing with they knew how to deal. They extended special help to her. If she doesn't want to come to the main meal, the main tent, we happened to bring her some food. Make sure that she's as comfortable. No matter what they did, she was complaining about everything, about the location, about the weather, where she is, the food, nothing was good. At some point, they brought it to my attention. So I went over to her and I spoke to her, tried to calm her down. It was already, the Shabbat was about to begin, so we couldn't really send her back to home. So I said to her, if you want, we could also find a local hotel, and you could stay there and then go home whenever you want to go home. Anyway, she didn't want to. She stayed in her tent. And it was really, as I said, I didn't feel there was that much that can be done. And I said, we're here for you. Anything you need, let us know. That was Friday night. The next day, by the Shabbat prayers, we read the Torah. This would happen to be the week, which corresponds to the basically this period in time after the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. Tisha B'Av comes the Shabbat. It's called Shabbos Nachamu. Nachamu means the Shabbat of comfort, a double comfort. It's the comfort that comes after loss, after pain, after suffering. In this case, the different tragedies that happen in this sad period, the destruction of the temple. So the Bible talks about the comforting that the prophets and God comfort the people after what they have endured. Okay, So at the reading of the Torah, after the reading, I gave a few words, I shared a few words, and I spoke about the comforting, where God sends the prophets to comfort the Jewish people after the destruction of the temple. And the way the narrative is told is that the Jews said to the prophets, tell God, since you're the one that caused these problems for us, why don't you come yourself to comfort us? Why are you sending messengers, people? So God responds, yes, you're right, and I will then come comfort you. So I asked the question, didn't God understand that on his own? If you hurt someone, you don't send a messenger. You go yourself and ask for forgiveness and try to console or try to correct or repair whatever happened. It's like somewhat cowardly to send someone to do it for you. So why did God send the messengers in the first place? He should have come come right away and say, hey, things happened, I'm here for you, I want to show you that I care, I empathize. So what I suggested was, in my few words that I shared, that God can comfort and console us. Obviously, God can do anything. But he wanted to give the power to human beings to comfort each other. Because we are all mortals. And we all can be hurt, and we all have losses, and we all are weakened by it and demoralized. Can we help each other, even though we're sometimes in the same boat? And God wanted to give us a gift that said, yes, that you can empathize with another and actually help them. So there's actually an expression that says in the Talmud that when you visit someone who's sick, God forbid, you actually remove 1/60th of the illness. I remember as a child, I asked my father, does that mean if you visit someone 60 times that you remove the illness entirely? So I remember he laughed and said, you'll get older, you'll understand. The point, of course, is not you're removing physically the illness. The comfort that you provide, the friendship, the support, strengthens someone's immune system, as we see today, actively see. That, and God forbid, no one should ever be in a situation, but you have to see someone who's lying in bed ill, and they have visitors and guests and friends and family and gifts. It strengthens them. It strengthens your immune system. It strengthens your will to fight. And indeed, the healing process is intensified. Whereas if you see another person lying alone and no one comes to visit, it definitely is demoralizing and weakens the spirit, weakens the will to fight. So there's something that we can add to each other, and this is a gift that God gave the human race. That's why he sent humans and said, you go comfort them. Obviously, he understood that he has to also come and comfort. But that's the significance. That was the main point I shared. Anyway, as I finished speaking, I noticed a woman that I mentioned standing on the side, listening very closely, very intently. And after I finished, she came over to me and she said, can I share a few words with you? So I went out outside of the tent. We stood outside, and she shared with me, I want to apologize, she said, for my behavior last night. I was really obnoxious to you and to everyone, and it has nothing to do with what you guys have done. You've done a wonderful job. I have nothing to really complain about. I'm in a very bad place. And then she broke the news. She said a year ago, my son, my 18 or 19-year-old son, died of an aneurysm. So this is the first yard site. And I came for this weekend to somewhat try to forget, try to distract myself. I felt maybe this will help me. But you can imagine, I have a tremendous hole in my heart, and there's nothing that anyone can really do. And as I was listening to you, I want to tell you that I was comforted, exactly as you said, that your words, and in general, the camaraderie here and the friendship that people are showing to me, as much as it's hard for me, has comforted me. So your words are absolutely correct. Humans can comfort each other. It doesn't mean we solve each other's problems, doesn't mean it takes away the whole issue, but there's something about the power of empathy. And after she told me this to me, I reminded myself of the mirror neurons. It's not just that we feel someone else's pain or we can relate to them, that we actually can give off an energy that can actually help each other. We don't always understand these things. What does empathy do when you see someone in pain, or someone has lost something, or someone who's suffered a terrible tragedy, and you show that you care, love? What's actually happening? The answer is that's the fact of the matter is we are not just bodies, we are souls, and there's definitely energy that we are transmitting. People feel that. There's an expression a beautiful expression from one of the great sages. It says, words from the heart enter the heart, which essentially suggests that words from the mouth or from the brain go into one ear and out the other, but it's coming from the heart. A heart feels a heart. In the words of King Solomon, in the book of Proverbs, he says, just like a face is reflected in water, one heart is reflected in another. There's something about compassion, empathy, that affects one another. That's the way it works. And it is, and it's not some mumbo jumbo, it's not some pop psychology, it's an actual part of our human experience. I don't know if science has really come to fully appreciate it. I think to some extent we've begun to understand it. Medicine, once upon a time ago, you look at medical books, you don't see much about empathy. Yeah, a doctor had to have bedside manner and to be kind and so on, but the extent of its impact has yet to fully be appreciated. You know, there's an expression, I'm not sure who coined it, but it's a very powerful expression. It says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I say this as a speaker, and I share this with other speakers. People come to me for advice and suggestions. I said, remember, it's not what you say. It's how you say it, and do people feel you're caring? You know, you're talking about a topic, especially if you're talking about human relations, something that's emotional, something that's connected to human experience. Caring is more important even than the content of what you say. Because then people feel there's an empathy involved. You care, you're invested. It's very different than just speaking academically about a topic detached, because there's the heart involved. And the hearts speak to hearts. If you need a practical example, just look at what a mother and a father do for their children. It's not the words they say. A child from a young age has nurturing parents. That nurturing, which is unspoken in many ways, as much as you say, it's more what you feel, that nurtures a child. That's like oxygen. And the best way to appreciate it is, God forbid, when we're deprived of it. You know, we don't even appreciate that. When you're breathing and you're healthy, you don't really appreciate how important that is. It's when, God forbid, you see someone struggling to breathe, you suddenly realize, hey, it's not such a simple thing. It's a gift, a miracle that we're breathing. When you realize how many processes have to be working and so on. And the same thing is with nurturing and empathy. We know today that you take a child away from his parents at a young age, you know, adoption or so on, there's always going to be some type of detachment, or what we call attachment disorder, because we need attachment, we need connection. I've discussed this many times. 9 months, every one of us have spent in our mother's womb. 9 months. You know, why is it that way? So the Hasidic masters talk about it, because it's preparing us to enter into a hostile, difficult material world. So God created it in a way that for 9 months the child is completely enveloped, completely surrounded, completely embraced by his mother. You eat what your mother eats, you drink what your mother drinks, you breathe her breath, everything. Then, when the child is ready to be born, we cut the umbilical cord. So even though physically the child is separate, but it still needs that type of nurturing. And if you deprive a child, God forbid, of that nurturing, it has long-term effects. It doesn't mean you can't counter it. It doesn't mean there's no hope. There's always the ability to find ways to compensate, but nothing comparable to having that nurturing, because it's essentially the validation of a human being, and a child that's validated and is reinforced their confidence, builds a child that as they grow older will be confident in themselves and have self-esteem. And if you study this closely, you'll find that most problems in the area of relationships, of trust, of confidence and courage, the fears we deal with, the insecurities, can often be traced to a childhood where those insecurities were developed. They came from parents who were either absentee or did not encourage, or worse, abuse and other forms, which creates for a child, it disrupts a child's momentum and confidence and security. For children, security is a critical piece of their whole development, because it creates healthy attachments, that you know that someone cares about you. You deserve to be loved. These are words you hear from people who have not had that. They talk, I don't think I deserve to be loved. And it has very far-reaching implications. So the concept of empathy is more than just feeling sad for someone, or feeling compassionate and being a little sensitive. It's really a fundamental piece of the puzzle. And that's why it shouldn't be a surprise that in Judaism, in the Torah, what is the biggest mitzvah of all mitzvahs? So Rabbi Akiva said it, loving another. Love your fellow like yourself. He says this is Klal Gadol b'Torah, this is the fundamental principle of the entire Judaism, the entire Torah. The truth is the fundamental principle of entire humanity. And Hillel, another great sage, said it in different words. When he was asked, the famous story, teach me the entire Torah standing on one foot. That's what he said. He just said it in an opposite expression. He said, don't do unto others that which you don't like done to you. Which is another form of saying loving another. Because love is really, and empathy go hand in hand as being the single most important ingredient in helping build a healthy human being. You build the confidence, like I said, you build the security, you build trust, which is the basis of all relationships, and especially personal relationships. I can't even tell you how many people I personally have met, and I'm sure you know people, and you look around, you can test the waters. People who have difficulty finding a significant other in their lives, or are struggling in that area, it often and very often will be traced to their own childhoods, to their own family, to their own parents. They did not always see a healthy relationship, so they don't have a model. So when we talk about empathy, we talk about comforting. We're talking about, as I said, something that's not optional. It's a vital and essential. And I'm sure with science developing new ideas and more research, we'll actually see these effects that can be documented and can be turned into modalities. But what I'm sharing here is already a several thousand-year-old model that goes back all the way thousands of years ago, starting with Abraham, and I mean Abraham of the Bible, where he already began teaching the idea of chesed, kindness, and which includes compassion and empathy and feeling for another. So the power of that really comes down to having that connection to each other. And if you really break it down, it's exactly like the title of this program that we've titled it, the empathy effect, feel, listen, heal. So in practical terms, what each of us can do is that when you're talking to someone, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there has to be a problem or a tragedy. Obviously, when there is one, it's more amplified. The importance of it, realize that it's not just a conversation between two minds. You're talking about here also two human beings. So you're having a healthy conversation with someone you care about, they care about you. Or even if it's a stranger. And I'm not talking about a purely superficial relationship, but even in a simple thing, you go shopping and you meet someone. Or even in a business relationship. Empathy plays a role in every connection. It can never hurt. It can only create more trust. Not everything has to be purely cutthroat in negotiation. Empathy is feeling. That person sees you feel, which really means you care. That there's another person there. It's not just a brain, it's not just an idea, it's not just something academic and abstract. That there's a human being. You trust human beings. You don't trust just someone who's saying all the right things. Like I said, someone that cares. The second is to listen. What does listening mean? That you're not just speaking all the time. You have the humility to be able to step back and hear what another person has to say, even if you don't like what they're saying, even if you think you're smarter, even if you think that they're wrong. They may be wrong, but every human being has the dignity, has the right to say what they have to say. And this is especially true to people who care about each other. How many parents don't know how to listen to their children? And obviously, the other way around, of course, is true as well. What does listening mean? To pick up the nuances between the lines, the sensitive things that you don't usually pick up when your ego is very loud, when you are dominating. And finally, the third, that brings healing. That is healing in itself. And I said, even if there's no overt problem, the mere fact that you are sitting with someone who feels and listens is a tremendous power. Share another story that always touched me. This is a story with the second Chabad Rebbe, called the Mittler Rebbe. He was the the oldest son of the founder of Chabad, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the author of the Tanya, Shulchan Aruch, a great sage, a great mystic, a great leader. In many ways, many of the teachings I share come from this school of thought, the Chabad school of thought. And his son his name was Rabbi Dov Ber, rather, and he would, as all the Rebbes each in their time, would, besides teaching and educating and leading their communities and as many people as that would gravitate to them, they also had private audiences. People would come to them for advice. There was especially after the holidays, people would come and visit these Rebbes for the holidays, spend time there, pray together, dance together, sing together, celebrate together. So after the holiday season, there was a thing called Yechidus. Yechidus in Hebrew is a Hebrew word which means a personal meeting, but like a heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul meeting between the Rebbe, a mentor, and his student, and his disciple, his chassid, his follower. So the Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, as was the custom, people would have an appointment. They would be online waiting, and he would see them one after another separately, and listen to them closely, and then give them either advice or a blessing or whatever it is that they asked for. So once it happened that after seeing quite a few people, someone came in to see the Mittler Rebbe, and the Mittler Rebbe listened to the person closely, and then they finished, and the Rebbe said to the person to go out of his room, and the Rebbe then told his assistant that he's stopping his audience. He's stopping it. The assistant didn't really know why, because it was not uncharacteristic of the Rebbe. There were people waiting, and people would need to travel, go back home. But he hears behind the door, once the Rebbe was alone in his room, that the Rebbe is praying and crying, and he was going through some experience that the assistant and the others did not understand. After a period of time, I'm not sure we know how much time, but it was a while, the Rebbe finally said, okay, send the person back into the room, the person who he had seen last, and he resumed these audiences. After it all finished, so the Rebbe explained to his assistant at some point what had happened. He said, when people come to see me and they share a problem, the first thing I do is I have to find that problem within myself. I don't just give them advice. I need to identify with them. And even though it may be a problem that sometimes I don't have within me, but somewhere in a subtle form, the fact that they're sharing with me means there's something within me that I need to look at with some introspection and soul searching. There was this individual that came in, shared something with me which was something I could not for the life of me find within myself. It was something really terrible. So I realized I can't give him advice until I find it. So I needed time to pray and to do that soul searching and introspection. And once I was able to find somewhere in a subtle form what he shared with me within myself, I was able to correct it within myself, and then I could share advice with him. That's what the Rebbe had said. You think about this. Talk about empathy, talk about bedside manner. That a Rebbe, you could say the Rebbe was a great man. He's a tzaddik, he's a righteous person. Who says he has to have every flaw that every human being has? But that's not how he saw himself. He saw himself that if he's a leader, he's not detached from the people he's leading. Everything going on in their lives in some way is happening within him. There's a mirror neuron. Yes, some way it's being mirrored within him. It could be very subtle. Obviously, it's not on the level that it is in the people that he's seeing. But he would not be able to move forward and can definitely not give advice without finding it within himself. And if you think about the depth of the story, it's not just being sensitive and being empathetic and being compassionate. He recognized that there is a connection between all of us, and especially a Rebbe, that he has to find that experience within himself. That changes the whole picture. Imagine a person who not just feels and cares, but he literally is finding whatever you're experiencing within himself, and he's identifying with you. So he's enduring whatever you're enduring. That changes the picture, because we know that all of us will have our challenges and setbacks in life. But if you know there's someone, especially someone you respect, as someone that out there that cares about you, and they're experiencing it like you are, And yes, just like you have a sleepless night, that person cannot sleep because they care about you. That is healing. That's powerful. Because something is conveyed. It's not just that you feel someone cares about you. There's an energy that's flowing from that individual to you. And that's really what a Rebbe really is, a true Rebbe. Same was Moses in his time. That there's the connection that's more than I'm a teacher and you're learning from me. But it's, I'm connected with you. That what you experience, I experience. Now, whether all of us can reach that level of empathy, that's each one of us has to do our work. But never underestimate the power of caring, the power of empathy, and the empathy effect that you have on others. And it's a vital component, especially in a world like ours, where there's so much detachment, where there's so much technology. You know, people call, you may have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of friends on Facebook or on other social media. And what do you mean, what kind of friends are they? Yeah, by name, there's a friend, but is it a real friend? When's the last time you had a conversation, heart to heart, soul to soul, in a way that you really feel you cared and the other person cared? So technology, with all its gifts, also creates a lot of loneliness and a lot of separation. So, especially now in these weeks, what we call them the weeks of comfort. There's the 7 weeks of comfort, as I mentioned earlier, beginning with Nachmu, the comforting. This is a special time, an energy of comfort, of consoling. And no matter what one endures in life, there's also an energy that's able to comfort you, that's able to give you strength and power, because you're not alone. There are others that care. And that care is more powerful than what we think. So sometimes when a person may not be able to help you directly in an overt way, but they're helping you with their care. They're helping you with their love. And we have to understand the responsibility each one of us has in this regard, because you never know. Someone sitting near you could be a stranger, it could be someone you know, and maybe one kind word can change their lives. Never know the power of care. And when you don't say the word, you could also be adding to their loneliness and to their isolation. So think about that. Next time you meet people, every time you meet people for that matter, what does it hurt to say an extra kind word? You know, we sit together at times in stadiums. Let's say at a game, you have 90,000 people cheering. As soon as the game is over, everyone goes off their way. So yeah, for the moment we were all together, but was that a real unity? But imagine you said something nice to the person near you and you even exchange numbers. And you share with them a message, a nice, inspiring message. These things can change people's lives, and we never know what another person is going through. And I said again, and as I said earlier, this doesn't mean that it has to only be in time of trouble or in time of crisis or time of stress or tragedy, God forbid. Everyone should be protected from that. Even in good times. Can never hurt, because we all need each other. Because at the end of the day, God created 8 billion people on this planet right now. I'm sure is going to grow. Each one of us are indispensable entities that God put in this world. Each of us is absolutely necessary, and each of us need each other, like one large cosmic symphony. And each of us has to play our music. And we are dependent on each other. At the same time, we have our unique contribution to make. Imagine if every person in this world knew that, and a part of that is expressing it to each other and showing that empathy, showing that care, instead of what we find so much today, hatred, violence, judgment, discrimination, racism, and so on. Imagine what kind of world it would be. So may we all be blessed with that wisdom, and I would say also the emotional intelligence of exercising those muscles within our hearts, which are called empathy and compassion and caring, and may that bring much healing to each of us and to the entire world. And as Maimonides writes, that we have to always look at the world as equally balanced, like a scale, where you have all the good and all the negative, all equally balanced. And one good deed, one good word, one kind word, one good thought tips the scales and brings personal and global redemption. May that be the case. May each of us do our part in this. Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson. MeaningfulLife.com is our website. If this message was meaningful to you, please share it with others. Please subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel, and of course, always love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, and your comments. Because after all, we are all one organism, and we all need each other, and we all need each one of us in the same context. So thank you again, everyone. Be well and be blessed. Thanks.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.